Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Are you guys brothers? Yeah? Okay. Who's older? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 54. We're almost at the end of this chapter. What Prahlad learned in the womb. Daiteya yaksharakshamsi Striya Shudra Vrajaukasha Khagamraga papa jivaha Santi yachutatam gata Daiteya yakshayakshamsi Sriya Shudra Vrajau Kasaha Kagamraga Papa Jivaha Santi Yachutatam Gataha Daiteyaha. Oh, demons. Yaksharakshamsi. The living entities known as the yakshas and rakshasas. Sriyaha, women. Shudraha, the laborer class. Braja Okashaha, village cowherd men. Kaga, birds. Mriga, animals. Papajiva, sinful living entities. Santi, can become. He, certainly. Achutatam, the qualities of Achyuta, the Supreme Lord. Gataha, obtained. Translation: O my friends, O sons of demons, everyone including you, the yakshas and rakshasas, the unintelligent women, shudras and cowherd men, the birds, the lower animals, and the sinful living entities, can revive his original eternal spiritual life and exist forever simply by accepting the principles of Bhakti Yoga. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The devotees are referred to as Achyuta Gotra, or the dynasty of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is called Achyuta, as indicated in Bhagavad Gita. Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapaya Me Chuta. The Lord is infallible in the material world because He is the Supreme Spiritual Person. Similarly, the jivas, who are part and parcel of the Lord, can also become infallible. That's pretty good. Become infallible. Although Prahlad's mother was in a conditional state and was the wife of a demon, even yakshas, rakshasas, women, shudras, and even birds and other lower living entities can become elevated to the Achyuta Gotra, the family of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the highest perfection. As Krishna never falls, when we revive our spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, we never fall again to material existence. One should understand the position of the Supreme Achyuta Krishna, who says in the Bhagavad Gita 4:9, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tatvataha jakpa deham punar janma naiti mameti sarjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. One should understand Achyuta, the Supreme Infallible, and how we are related to Him. And one should take to the service of the Lord. This is the perfection of life. Srila Madhvacharya says, Achyutatam chuti varjanam. achutatam, chuti varjanam. The word achutatam refers to one who never falls to this material world, but always remains in the Vaikuntha world, fully engaged in the service of the Lord. End of purport. Daitaya yaksha rakshamsi, striya shudra, vrajau kasa, kaga, mraga, papa jiva, santi, hi chutatam gata. O my friends, O sons of demons, everyone, including you, the yakshas and rakshasas, the unintelligent women, shudras and cowherd men, the birds, the lower animals, and the sinful living entities can revive his original spiritual life and exist forever simply by accepting the principles of bhakti yoga. Santi yajutatam gata. Prahlad Maharaj is persuading his friends, his classmates, my dear friends, O sons of demons, take to devotional service to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present everywhere. This is an example that Prabhupada sometimes gives us of one who is on the topmost platform, the Uttama Adhikari platform, coming down to the Madhyama Adhikari platform and preaching Krishna consciousness. Because the previous verse and the next verse are indicating Prahlad's position. That is, his position of seeing Krishna everywhere. The seeing Krishna everywhere idea I wish Rabindra was here. He had gave a whole class once just on when he was a college student and heard Prabhupada say, when you see a tree, you don't see it, the devotee doesn't see a tree, he sees Krishna. So he was trying to philosophically understand, what does that mean? You don't see a tree, you see Krishna. I mean, what do you see? So it can mean you see the super soul. It can mean you don't see the tree, you see Krishna. It can mean that you see this is Krishna's energy and he's present through his energy. And depending upon the platform of Krishna consciousness, it could be any one of those. Because Krishna discloses himself according to the surrender that one has towards him. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Govardhan Hill, he saw Krishna. When he saw Chatak Parvat, he saw Govardhan Hill and saw Krishna. And he went running because of his absorption in the mood of separation from Krishna. Now this verse is speaking about when that strength of Krishna consciousness is there, then anyone that qualifies being a spirit soul, that spirit soul, by absorption in the internal potency of Krishna, can become Krishna conscious. I just, about a week ago, listening to Prabhupada explaining this, the main force of the class was Prabhupada speaking about without the principles of religion, in human society, then you don't have human society. You have animal society. And, all the things that Prabhupada would say, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and what's the difference? And they're making a grand arrangement for sleeping on the top floor of a big building. And the dog is sleeping in the street. What's the difference? They're thinking this is advancement and all that kind of explanation. But it's animal society. And just dismiss it. Now, materialists don't like to hear that kind of talk. I'm dealing with a situation right now where someone is having an issue with how Prabhupada dismisses. That's like one morning walk in New York, in Brooklyn. We were living at Henry Street Temple and walking up Henry Street towards the Brooklyn Promenade, because the devotees had said, Prabhupada, that's it. Rather than take you all the way to Battery Park, we can just walk up to the promenade. It's a very nice place. So we walked up to the promenade. And two things that are very prominent from that morning walk. Prabhupada walks, although his stature was short, he walked very fast. And, every third step you had to half run just to keep up with Prabhupada because he was walking so fast, although stature was short. So we were, walking, and then Prabhupada stopped, and practically everybody collided around, because it's just a narrow sidewalk. And he pointed with his cane and said, "What is that?" And everybody looked at what he was pointing at. And somebody said, "It's grass, Prabhupada," growing out of the sidewalk. He said, "How did it get there?" And everybody looked at each other and said different things, and a spore went through the air and landed over here and through the crack. And Prabhupada said, "No. From the rain, it's demigods falling and landing. Otherwise, how could they come in that little crack through the rain?" And then he explained the Chandogya Upanishad process from Bhagavad Gita, that through process of sacrifice comes rains and grains and people and so on. And he looked around and everyone was, "Wow, Prabhupada." And then he, took off again. So we're wandering through these, make a left-hand turn to go through Brooklyn Heights, little different than the neighborhood we were in, brownstone, big trees, very expensive neighborhood. And then you'd make a little bit of a turn, and all of a sudden you're in this promenade, this big clearing. And when you in the big clearing, right on the other side of the park, it's just, it's a very long rectangular park, about 40 feet wide, 50 feet wide, and then there's this Manhattan skyline, right in your face. And Prabhupada took about 20 steps into that park and stopped, put his cane down, turned to everybody and said, he pointed with his cane at the skyline. It said, "Simply based on sex desire," and dismissed it. All these big, big buildings, simply based on sex desire. Looked at everybody and how, just dismissive gesture like that and not interested. To see the manifestation, because matter takes its configuration according to consciousness, and one who's very much situated in the mode of passion builds a world around them that is like that, and the material energy facilitates, according to one's surrender to Krishna. Krishna discloses his feature according to their disposition or their regard for him. And so, animal society, back to the lecture that Prabhupada was speaking. Animal society is a society that is simply moved by the modes of nature, and even if they throw some notion of God, a name of God, or something of God, to not live their life according to those codes given by God, it's animal society. Without the progressive, very careful following of the indications according to the codes given in Scripture, it's animal society. And so, what makes the human society? The human society is this progression towards God consciousness. Then Prabhupada was saying that if one is very powerful, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he can make the wild animals in the jungle become Krishna conscious. The dog of Shivananda Sain, he can make him Krishna conscious. Then Prabhupada was saying, I am not so powerful. Human society, living like animals, that's been my challenge. He didn't use that language, but that's what he was saying. To take human society living like animals and make the human society follow the path that is given by God to reach Him, to accept the standards and the regulations. But the purpose of those standards and regulations is to come to the point of God consciousness. The distinction here then is the internal potency, the force of the internal potency versus the external potency. Once Prabhupada was asked, Swamiji, what would happen if the whole world became Krishna conscious? Your movement is growing very fast. Who knows, one day the whole world may become Krishna conscious. What will happen if the whole world becomes Krishna conscious? Prabhupada smiled and said, don't worry, it won't happen. But if it were to happen, then this world will become Vaikuntha. This world will become Vaikuntha. I was thinking, wow. I'm thinking Vaikuntha is someplace away, like from here, and even if, by spiritual travel, it's still someplace that's not here, because this isn't Vaikuntha. So how does this, he's teaching, Prahlad is teaching way up here. He's teaching from the previous verse and the next verse, seeing Krishna everywhere. There's a very nice commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Mention was made yesterday, the prayers by the personified Vedas, with Bhakti Marg Swami doing a drama on prayers by the personified Vedas one day. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur presents a beautiful short purport, commentary on this whole discussion that's in the prayers by the personified Vedas, which relates very much to this topic. The theme of the longest chapter of the 10th canto, the prayers by the personified Vedas, is discussion between the Vedas personified on a very important topic. And the topic is, how do you get to the spiritual position when you're using material instruments? At the end of hearing all of Krishna's pastimes, and Maharaj Parikshit's consciousness is fixed on Krishna. He's ready for anything. He raises a doubt. He says, how was this possible? Because the way to get to this position was, I use something material, my ear, and you use something material, your tongue. So how does something material and something material combine to make something spiritual? Which is a core theological question, which is, how does God, who is all spiritual, make something that's material? How does God, who is all perfect, make this place where people suffer and people do bad things to people? They do bad things to God. It's a core theological question, and the answer to that question makes up different theologies. So, Maharaj Parikshit, having asked that question, Shukadeva Goswami says, such a nice question. This question was asked long, long ago, when great sages were asking the same question. When they were discussing that question, they said, great question. That question was asked long, long ago. In fact, the four Kumaras and the personified Vedas were discussing this very question. It's like a core question. The short answer, over this really long chapter, is that everything comes from Krishna. So even the ear and the tongue, when used in relation to Krishna, accepts a spiritual quality or regains its original spiritual quality. And when the original spiritual quality is regained, then it can act spiritually. The tongue can act spiritually, the ear can act spiritually. So in the discussion, some of the personified Vedas are speaking like this. And then the Gopala Tapani Upanishad says, oh, that's not the full picture. Something like in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that's not the full picture. The full picture is one is meant to see the personality of Godhead. And then it describes the process, how through the process of hearing one can see the personality of Godhead. It's a very short commentary, but it very much depends upon the regard or the receptivity of the person hearing from the qualified speaker. The qualified ear and the qualified heart. But the point of emphasis I want to make here is what Prahlad is presenting here in the 7th canto is he's instructing his friends, O sons of the demons, that all of you, no qualification, sinful people, birds, lower animals, they too, and you too, can see the personality of Godhead, achieve the highest perfectional stage of life. Now, that takes so Prabhupada's qualifying statement in his lecture was, there has to be the potency. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could do that with animals. Prabhupada was saying, I cannot. Whether he could or couldn't, he was saying, I cannot. But the challenge that he had accepted and the challenge that we have is persons, humans. So the qualification is they simply have to be spirit soul, which generally people qualify. And then with conviction, like what Prahlad is doing, with conviction and with having heard properly from Narada, he's speaking with power, because purity is the force. He's speaking with power. He wants to bring these, just like Bear Krishna Maharaj's theme of the class yesterday was compassion. He really cares deeply about the welfare of, like the language that comes later, these fools and rascals. So when Prabhupada would use that language, fools and rascals, people didn't like it. You know that scene from Your Ever Well-Wisher, they're in the garden and Prabhupada saying rascals, and one professor says, what about some other term? That's the summation of rascaldom. But when Prahlad Maharaj used that term, as when Prabhupada used that term, what did he, when he regarded those persons, it's how they're using their free will. It's not like looking down his nose and saying, yuck. How are they, this valuable thing that they have, the human form of life, that's so much being misused. How unfortunate. I don't want to go back to the spiritual world without taking them with me. That was Prahlad's use of fools and rascals. It was not condemning or condescending, but deep care. So I'm partly speaking the way that I'm speaking this morning because I was just dealing last 2 days with somebody that's kind of lost their whole faith in Krishna consciousness, a newer person, because from hearing and reading Prabhupada's books, he speaks so strongly. Rascals. And like Mir Krishna Maharaj was saying yesterday about, impersonalists, rascals. And some people go, why does Swamiji speak like that? So Prabhupada said, I can speak like that, you cannot. And why he can speak like that is because it was coming from a place of compassion. I mean, part of it was his seniority and his elderly position and everything, his Krishna consciousness, but it was out of compassion. And part of the compassion was to protect us, like the fence around the little creeper that's growing, a little bhakti creeper, so that we don't confuse what's Krishna conscious with what's not Krishna conscious and start partaking of that which is not Krishna conscious, so we'd have very clear sense of protection. But his concern was not only our protection, his concern was the deliverance of those persons. And Prahlad is concerned with the deliverance of those persons. So the principle that's being applied, it's in the phrase of the verse. Santi hyachutatam gata, that one who has obtained, gata, the word for word is obtained. They've obtained achuta. They've obtained the position of being infallible, achutatam, not just achuta, achutatam, having the quality of being infallible. How do you do that? Obtain, because we're chuta. Proof. Here's our material body. We've fallen. We blew it. And even in the stage of spiritual perfection, we're still potentially chuta. But if we stay, using Prabhupada's words, packed up, or achutatam gata, having obtained the association of achuta, we become achutatam. Or in Madhvacharya's commentary, he writes, achutatam chuti, varjanam chuti. We're chuti. We're not achuta, we're chuti. Varjanam. But by the process of devotional service, achutatam, we become of the quality of like achuta, or infallible. We're borrowing the strength of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like the spark in the fire, and the spark out of the fire. Because as a spark out of the fire, it can dim and become extinguished. But in the fire, it's fire. So the position of devotional service is to stay always engaged in serving the Lord and hearing, remembering, constant engagement. Constant engagement. And that means being very careful to not engage in other stuff of hearing, remembering, going a little bit out on the limb, just to explore a little bit about something. Like Prabhupada once said, one of the problem with you Western devotees, this was in a Mayapur morning walk conversation, the problem with the Western devotees is you have a tendency to flirt with Maya. You go out on the limb and see how far before the limb starts to crack. Then you hear the limb starting to crack, and you run back towards the trunk of the tree. Don't do like that. Stay always packed up or very, very tightly situated in the process of hearing and chanting and associating and serving and remembering and worshiping and always striving in that way. That's the internal potency shelter. And with the internal potency shelter, you're with Krishna. And if something comes to try to take you away, if you're striving to be with Krishna, Krishna will protect you. It's protection. It's shelter. It's the doubtless and fearless path of, and who is eligible? Just be a spirit soul. And stay in the association of elevated devotees, devotees that are striving in a similar, sincere way. And what Prahlad is speaking in this verse, by accepting the principles of Bhakti Yoga, one can exist forever in this with Krishna position, even in this material world, becomes Vaikuntha. I heard Prabhupada say 3 times in New York, and then I was very surprised when I heard him say the same thing in Los Angeles in a recording. But Prabhupada said, this was in Henry Street, Brooklyn twice, and once in Manhattan. This temple is not in Brooklyn, it is in Vaikuntha. Remember hearing that, Chaturama? It is in Vaikuntha. Look outside the door, and it's not Vaikuntha. Not Vaikuntha. But everything, and he then explained why, because everything is centered on Krishna. So that's if we're living our life in Krishna consciousness in the way that we should. And then he said the same thing in Manhattan. This temple is not in New York. It's in Vaikuntha. Same thing in Los Angeles. Los Angeles isn't Vaikuntha. But the temple, if our life is situated that way, then we're in Vaikuntha. We're with Krishna. And at least we can see in relation to Krishna, seeing that if you don't see the tree, you see Krishna. See at least in relation to Krishna, Krishna's energy. Or know that Krishna is in the heart of each living entity. And if one's love of God has grown and matured, then one will see Krishna. Just like Dhruva saw the personality of Godhead standing before him. Although before he was seeing the Lord within the heart. And that same Supreme Personality of Godhead disappeared from his heart and suddenly was standing before him. So that was the purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The Gopal Tapani Upanishad wants us to know that's the goal. And that by the process of hearing, one can reach that goal. That goal. With these ears and this heart, and this tongue, and this body, and this, rapidly decaying civilization, society. The hope is there, the potency is there through these transcendental messages. Prahlad's a great coach. He's really got his team going. Great inspirer of Krishna consciousness. So, any comments or questions? Prajapati.
Maharaj, your class gave me a remembrance of a wonderful last conversation I had with Krishna Jan Maharaj. And Prabhupada had told him that none of us could have become devotees except that he, Prabhupada, empowered us with his Guru Kripa, with his personal energy that we were able to perform devotion.
Wow. That's nice. You're okay. Okay. All right. Here's another Prabhupada story that I heard, very young devotee, matches this one. Prabhupada was explaining this Guru Kripa. He was saying that don't think, some of you are thinking that you have become devotees because, you have a very pious background and many, many pious activities, now you've become a devotee. Prabhupada said, that is not so. I have found you in a dark place, I've grabbed you by the hair on your head, and I'm dragging you. And you are kicking and fighting and fussing and sputtering, and I'm dragging you to the spiritual position. That is the fact. Anything else? Chaturama, anything? Okay.
I'm appreciating that last year we just finished this chapter. And so coming in now hearing additional perspective is real nice.
The chapter that you just heard was the chapter of the demigods offering their prayers. But this is Prahlad's...
Well, just a little bit about it.
Okay. I remember that section from visiting in the Lachman. Anything on ladies' side? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.